Welcome to our meeting, May 21st, 2025. I'd like to call this meeting of the HHR Building Committee to order. First order of business is to approve the minute meetings from April 23rd, 2025. Can I get a motion, please? Jameson, Sarah seconds, all in favor. I assume Paul says yes if he doesn't say no. Public comment, we don't have any members of the public here. In terms of the chair's report, the one thing that's kind of interesting, we just kind of bring people up to date and we can talk about it a little bit more in the context of the financial report when we get to it. But thank you, Eric and Travis. We did, because you'll see, we still have not really tapped into our contingencies all that heavily, recognizing, and this is a huge, huge caveat, recognizing that we're still only close to 50% done with the project. There's a lot of work still to do. There's a lot of time still to pass. Started an exercise of identifying potential discretionary additions to the scope of the project at each of the three schools. And it's a little bit of a cart and a horse exercise, right? Before we can really roll out a comprehensive proposal or a comprehensive list of what we're thinking about, we need to get a feel for what, at least on a very, very ballpark basis, some of this stuff is going to cost. So Eric and Travis kind of, walking the schools with Jill and me, put together a preliminary list, and Kevin Monrette, a preliminary list of some items that might be good to consider. And now Scott and Matt and the O&G team are putting together some rough pricing. And once we have, a little bit more clarity on that, and we've also, Jill and Kevin and I have been talking a little bit about, some of these projects truly part of the HHR project, or are they more part of the school district capital budget or school district maintenance budget? When we've kind of gone through that exercise, we'll be able to roll out for discussion among the committee a list with kind of those columns filled out, right, if you will, rough cost, which bucket we think it should come from. Obviously, nothing on this list is going to proceed without, full input and approval and opportunity to review and comment with the committee. But we're starting the exercise so people, this is the kind of stuff like, should we replace floors in the cafeteria in Holmes? Should we consider possibly making the entranceway to Royle look nicer, considering that we're making both Hindley and Holmes having new, nicer entrances? I'm just looking at a couple of other examples. We said going into this project we weren't going to be renovating bathrooms in the old part of the schools. Well, maybe if we have, we have some money left, there's some bathrooms that we can, maybe fix up. So it's that kind of exercise. So stay tuned. Again, nothing's gonna proceed without, lots of opportunity for the full committee to review and discuss and have plenty of input on.
Hey, Chris, can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
How does that approval process work? So, like you're kind of creating a wish list, right? And if you want to almost call it that way, like I don't know if
Sure.
it's 10
Yeah.
items or 20
No,
items.
that's accurate.
What kind of bubbles to the top, and then does this committee kind of vote on each one and it moves forward? Like, can you give me an idea how we kind of envision
Yeah,
that?
I mean, and that's another part of the exercise, which I think is very relevant. And I apologize, I didn't really I left that out, which is kind of a priority scaling, right? A priority both in terms of importance, right? For example, is it a safety item, right? One of the things Scott and his team identified was a bunch of the brickwork at Royle needs to be repointed, right? Well, that's not in the budget, but it's kind of a
Hmm.
safety item, so it's on the list, right? The entrance to Royle, to make it prettier, isn't safety. It's much more of kind of it would be nice. I think, honestly, Rob, I think that's a great question. I kind of feel like we should discuss the entire list, and if people have input on, the list isn't that long. I would say it's in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 items, or today, now it's in the range of like 10 to 12 items per school. It may get scaled back as we move some into more like Darien Public Schools capital budget, for example, right?
Yep.
And then I just think we discuss each one, right? It's and I kind of think back to I, when we approved the design development early on, we essentially approved the whole thing. I think these are each. I think we have to look at each one individually, and whether it's a vote on each one individually or people have input and we go back and revise the list and then roll a revised comprehensive list out that we vote on. I guess I'm kind of let's see how it evolves, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just off the top of my head. I would kind of use a criteria. Does it make something easier? Does it make something make it? Does it make it look aesthetically better, or is it something, other, right? Whether
Yeah,
whatever the buckets are,
yeah.
right? Something
I
like
think
that.
the way Jill's not here, so I'll attempt to speak for her. But I think kind of the way we were thinking of it was, is it structural slash safety, right? Is it purely aesthetic? And is it something that is really beneficial to the educational experience of the students and the work environment of the faculty and staff? Right?
Yep.
Those are kind of the criteria that we were using to identify things.
Okay.
Obviously, pointing the brick is safety, right? A nicer entranceway at Royle is more kind of purely aesthetic. Things like redoing the floors in the gym or the cafeteria in Holmes, probably is more in the nature of like that kind of improves the educational experience because it's a nicer floor and it's not buckling, and it just makes for a better school environment. But those are kind of the categories we were thinking of as we started the exercise.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Um,
Yeah, just quickly, Chris, I could jump in. Like the floor at Holmes, right? It's probably about 20 grand all in that neighborhood. That's a big impact though. Like when people walk into that school and they see that new cafeteria floor, that's something that everyone's going to notice, and it looks like we did something
right.
for relatively not a lot of money,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
again, I do think it is going to warrant an item by item discussion, right? And then it's probably Eric and Travis and Scott take the list after these discussion items, and we revise the list and we roll it out and say, okay, here it is. Here's about what it's going to cost on a per school basis. Here's the proposed timing of it. Candidly, if we decide to go forward with this stuff, and again, there's going to be proposed kind of when we think it should happen, right? And the vast majority of it, there's a very, very small group of items that are tagged for like summer of 2025, right? Most of the
Yeah.
stuff is 25, 26 school year. But it will be a little bit of a calculated, educated risk assessment, right? Like this all looks great. This is the list. This is what we want to do. Looks like we have plenty of money with some cushion. And then it's like, okay, let's,
Yeah.
do we go?
Yeah. And I would think the other consideration then we can kind of move on is does it put the overall, timeline in jeopardy? Which I wouldn't think. Like Steve would know it's more than me, like something like the cafeteria floor. Can you just do that in the summer, right? When nobody's there, and does it, is it a 1.5 week job? I have no idea, right? I'm
Right.
just throwing
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
But okay, yeah, and I belabored enough, but I love the concept.
No,
I
I
just
think that's
think
all
there's some,
great
yeah,
input, and I think it's consistent with Eric and Scott and Travis, you guys have been on the ground with this. I think that's consistent with the approach we've been taking to it.
Cool. Thank you.
So with that, if I could, I'm sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say on one note with that, there's a repointing the that 40s wing at Royle is kind of a time sensitive thing as far as getting the masons in there to do that. I have not gotten that change order in because I've been back and forth with the mason on this, on getting the unit pricing right. It's in the total amount of square footage is around 2,000 square feet of repointing, and we figure about 600 brick replacement, and it's in the $70,000 range to do that work. I'm probably going to have to release that part of that work before this change order goes through and gets approved. I just don't know where you guys are landing on the actual repointing, but if I don't get them to do the courtyard portion of it, which is, I could break out what that square footage is and let you know Friday in the meeting. But if I'm going to have to kind of release him to do that work kind of before the change order gets approved, I think.
Well, I mean,
There's the formal
approval. There's the formal approval of the change order, but then I think we would like to at least have a pretty good idea of the pricing of it, right? Like, what are we going to see in that? I think we understand what the scope is going to be, but like approximately 70, or is it 70, right? So we kind of know what's coming.
So that's what I've been trying to. So I have the price for the 2,000 square feet, and I don't have it open. I apologize, but it is in that $70,000 range. And I just wanted to have unit pricing if we did go over, but also, if we go under, we could possibly go under that number. We get money back.
Well, how comfortable are you? And I'll let Jameson and Paul weigh in as well, or anybody else who wants to weigh in, that they've done a pretty comprehensive survey and the scope of the amount of work that needs to be done, that they've kind of got their arms around that. I mean, obviously stuff gets uncovered, stuff happens, but
so I feel the square footage number is probably real close to being right on. We came to an agreement on what we wanted to do. So I think we captured that. I'm not afraid of really going over on the square footage on the repointing. The brick, that's something that I guess could go over 600 brick. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it kind of is when you're replacing brick. But that's, up to interpretation on what brick needs to be removed and what doesn't, So that could possibly go over. To me, like I said, the courtyard is going to be the hardest spot to ever get into at that school. The rest of it's all real accessible, with a boom lift around the building,
right,
from parking areas. So if we knock out the courtyard side really good, I think we're in good shape. As far as the unit pricing goes.
Right.
I would just add, Chris, to be clear, this is a limited scope of the facade of the building. It's not an entire masonry restoration, right? We're looking at a especially deteriorated section of the facade, between the parapet and the upper
I understand
windows.
that, but is this the full scope of what we think needs to be repointed? I recognize it's not the whole facade, but is this the sum total of what we think needs to be repointed?
Yeah, based on that, scope where we determine this is the worst part of the building, and it's only going to help you in the future by alleviating future problems from the water getting in and infiltrating.
I mean, my position, and people are free to weigh in, but my position on this is that it's partly a safety issue because we don't want bricks falling off the wall, and it's partly just good construction practice because you'll get water infiltration and then you'll get freezing, and we'll end up having to fix it down the road. So
right.
My view, unless people feel differently, is that we should go ahead with it.
Yeah, 100%. I don't have any objection to that. My only thing is process, which I always speak about, is just, I know you want to release things and get things going, Scott, but I'm always concerned about when we make exceptions to the PCO not being signed off. The whole purpose of the sign off is just that, to make sure that we approve as a committee that it's to be done in a formal process, since this is town money.
Yeah, I understand. I wouldn't release him to do all the work. I'm just under a time crunch of getting them in there so I can complete the courtyard, and I would release the courtyard area. And if you guys at that point said, "Oh, wait a minute, you know what? We don't want to get this deep into this," it's a small percentage of the work, so you wouldn't be obviously spending all the money of that change order. And we could rework it at that point and say, "Hey, we want to stop right there and just do this courtyard side. We're not interested in spending that money on the rest of the building." I think no matter what, James, and on getting that courtyard done at this time, whether you guys decide to push this down the road for repairs, doing this now would be beneficial. It would save you money in the long run.
I think on the courtyard, yeah, I think the courtyard makes sense, right? I mean, I'll give my 2 cents is because that's new. That's part of the new construction, and it makes sense.
It's difficult to get back in there afterwards.
Right, right.
Now you're looking at setting up scaffolding.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the work. I'm on the same page as you guys with that. I just my comment was more to the process of making sure that we stick to the PCO.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Yeah, I think we should try to get the PCO in front of the group as quickly as you can.
Yeah,
What percentage of that? What percentage of that 70,000 is the courtyard? Is it half of it, a third of it? You know, if you had to guess.
It's probably a third.
Okay. I mean, that seems like it makes sense to me.
But I'll have the change order put together to put in front of you guys for Friday.
That would be great.
As soon as I see it, I will review and sign it if it's good to go. So
Yep.
There's no
And it looks like it's that's a 3-person, Matt. That's a 3-person based on the amount in question.
Yes.
Okay. That's a good segue, Scott. Maybe you could give folks.
Hold on. I got a question, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have a report on water infiltration? Have we done any water testing in these areas? Have we done any water testing to any of this stuff? I just repointed 3 buildings at Yale, 1929. Massive mold issues, massive stuff. So I am all for repointing, but I want to know what kind of testing. Is this just we're looking at the bricks and we think they're in bad shape and the mortar's coming out, or is this we've done some water testing?
So we haven't done water testing, but it's an eye test that does not get passed, right? The mortar's deteriorated, the brick is spalled, and you're starting to see some issues with the lintels over the tops of the windows.
Well, but I guess is Paul, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but is your question that, you know, okay, we're thinking this is a $70,000 project, but you start taking some bricks off the wall, and next thing you know, you got a much bigger problem behind the bricks.
I don't think
Yes.
in my estimate with the construction of the building, and Travis could probably elaborate on it more, but I don't think that there's a bigger problem because we would be seeing it inside the classrooms.
Right. That's why I'm asking the question if we've got any evidence of water infiltration inside the building.
So Paul, part of what kind of put us on this track, and this is probably good for everyone to hear, is that so when we were originally doing the addition, the classroom addition, the corridor portion of this classroom addition was supposed to bear on top of the parapet of the common room, auditorium portion of this existing building. And when we started the construction and took the cap off, the condition of that parapet was not one that would be able to support the new structure. So we had to remove that parapet down to roof level where the brick got solid and, end up pouring a grout base for the columns to sit on because that parapet was not in good condition. And that's kind of what made us look at the rest of the parapet saying, wow, the parapet on the rest of this 40s edition is in the exact same condition as this was, and we should probably repoint it. So that's kind of how we got there, Paul.
No, that makes perfect sense. Like I said, I'm very sensitive to this. If you've got infiltration, then obviously you got to repoint, and then you got other things you got to do, and water tests. But if we're just, so I would say yes. I just would want to make sure that we're documenting what we're doing, what sections we're doing, because I've done this and then have it not work and had to go back and repoint again. Because like you said, it looks like you can eye test it and say, oh yeah, these are what I'm going at, but then you can find you've got other fissures and other stuff that's not to the eye. So sometimes you're better off just doing everything, doing the entire face, unless you've got real strong evidence that the mortar's holding in spots, but not in others. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rest of the building looks in fair condition to leave. We're going to take it from the top of the parapet down to the top of the windows. And with the other work that's in the contract already with us, reworking the coping stones and the joints in the coping stones and the roofing around the perimeter, we've kind of taken care of that whole area as far as water infiltration. So I think it's relatively low risk on not repointing the entire building. I don't think the whole building needs to be repointed, honestly.
Yeah.
I just think over the years, the parapet, that's the first place where water's coming in, right?
Yeah, that's the first resistance to the weather. So that's going to take the brunt of it. Right? Totally. No, I'm not suggesting repoint. I'm just saying, I don't want to repoint a section and find out that was, and then it's how this goes with water. You strengthen one spot and now the weak spot shows up, 20 feet further down. So I just want to make sure we look at all of it. If it's all in good shape and we don't feel it needs to be, that's fine. But if there's a section that's clearly deteriorated and needs to be repointed, then we should definitely do it.
Okay, well, so we definitely will keep an eye on it, obviously, as we go. And if we take on this first section and find out that we run into something more than that, then we can, we'd have to reassess it from there.
Well, and we could apply the unit costs.
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're hoping that the water infiltration solved with the roof fix of the coping stones, because that seems to be where the problem was.
Okay. Anything else on that? If not, Scott, can you give an overview for the committee of kind of construction project, kind of a Reader's Digest version of the last OAC, as we, hard to believe, we're almost coming to the end of another school year. Going to have the campuses freed up for the summer. So another milestone being hit here.
Yeah. Yeah, the time flies. Yeah, it's hard to believe that we are at the end of May already, right? But things are going well on all three schools. Over at Royle, the staircase is going into, the stair on the that east elevation is going in. So we'll be getting those stairs poured hopefully within the next week. Flooring is in, ceilings are in, lights are in. I believe, did you guys all get the report I sent out?
Yes, the monthly report.
Yeah. So there's pictures in there. You can kind of see how far along things are. Wall tiles going up on the walls, in the corridors and the common areas. So we're getting ready to close ceilings now and then once ceilings are closed in, we'll, get the base in, and then lastly in those rooms is going to be the millwork. So that'll be, the cubbies and cabinets, and then the wood millwork on the walls. That'll be the last stuff to go in. But everything is moving in that direction, really, for all three schools. We're all kind of in the same position at all three schools. So things are really getting close to being done. It's really just wrapping up these finishes now. If there's anything specific that you guys are interested in, I can get into, but like I said, mostly we're working on on finishing stuff up and then getting ready for summer work, and that's really going to be the biggest push, right? We're finishing these, and now we're starting 2 new areas inside the schools.
Yeah, maybe give folks a sense of what, kind of big picture, what the phasing for the summer is going to be.
Yeah, so we're kind of, we've been working hard the whole time, but now we're really going to have to kick it into gear now for the summertime, right? Because now we have these additions to finish. we take on a phase in each school that is only for the summer, right? So that's similar to what we did last year, where we're going to be working in an area. We'll have to take some ceilings out, do some mechanical work above the ceiling, get ceilings put back in, and get unit ventilators put into those rooms, and then button those up. And those are generally under or over the phase one that we did last summer. So they're kind of tied to that first phase that we did last summer in those areas. And then we're also going to start taking on another area that we're taking over now this summer, but don't give back until December. And that's where we're really now working in the heart of these schools, right? So we're in their space on the first and second floors. Temporary walls will be up, and we'll be working in that space until December. And that's reworking, in some cases, reworking classrooms. So we're demoing walls and changing classroom sizes. So it's, it's full renovation work inside of a working school. So we're going to have a lot to navigate there. Obviously staying in contact with the principals and working with their schedules to get this work done. I think we navigated pretty well through the testing this spring, and trying to navigate our work with the kids trying to do their testing. It was definitely not easy for us to be as noisy as we are while they're doing that testing. So hopefully the principals can comment on us accommodating them.
Yes, you accommodated us. It was we sent you the we sent Matt and Kevin the schedule ahead of time, and they did a good job navigating around our state testing. So
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Non-disruptive, everything was perfect. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Scott, and your team for that.
Same at Holmes. Evan was on top of it. Absolutely on top of it. We did ask the roofing guys to stop at one point, and they were stopped within 10 minutes. So it's perfect.
Same at Royle. Just a couple of reminders. It was the one time, unfortunately, we couldn't be as flexible as we normally are. So thank you to everyone for being patient with that, and making sure our kids were able to get through that testing as best they could.
Yeah, we appreciate your patience and us trying to push the limits of our of us working with you guys.
Well,
so
thanks.
we've done a lot of preparation to get ready for this work. I know over at Holmes, Paula and her team have accommodated us to get into the GLC area a week early from the kids getting out for us to do some work to get ready for that mezzanine that we have to build in there in order to get a panel in that runs rooftop units. I can't explain it enough that it's going to be a lot of intricate work and a lot of coordination on our end with all the moving parts that we have coming into the summer. So we're going to be very, very busy and hit the ground running once school is over. So on top of, like I said, finishing up these phases and getting the outside done and courtyards ready and grass in and all that, we have a lot of work on the inside to do as well.
Cool. Any questions or comments or input from the committee members on what Scott went through?
One more thing I just want to touch on quick, Chris, is that
go ahead.
Have the guys, and we'll talk about this more at the OAC too, but I figure some of the members won't be on, but we have the newsletters that are going to be going out by the end of this month. And then we are also going to update a neighbor letter, kind of updating the neighbors on where we are on their project and kind of just thanking them for their continued, cooperation while we go through this construction phase, for another year.
Of course, that begs the question of the neighbors for the most part. I mean, nothing's crossed my email. Normally, I hear stuff either directly from neighbors or an email from John Zagrodzky, and I haven't gotten either, other than some commentary on the flooding in the backfield at Holmes. But
most part's been really good. I think we're in good shape. By this time, as much as nobody likes us in the neighborhood, you get kind of used to it after a while, right? We've been here for a year now, and
right.
kind of, embedded ourselves into the neighborhood and people are kind of accepting, what's going on. And, we try to accommodate everybody when we do get something from the neighbors. So hopefully that's helped.
Cool. Then just switching gears a little bit, same basic theme, but the financial situation as of May, circulated Josh's most recent snapshot and financial report summary. The high level picture is that we're about 42% of the way through our basic budget. As I said a little earlier in the meeting, not quite 50% of the way there. We're making a lot of progress. It's really chugging along. To my point about the potentially expanded scope wish list that Rob named it, and I actually think that's accurate.
Pizza. Most of them talk about Sally's and Pepe's, but the real ones proudly claim.
Hey, Ross, could you mute your computer, please?
If not at the top of the class. Currently, I've got Sally's 1, Pepe's 2.
I disagree. I think modern is the best, but that's my own personal opinion.
I'm with you, Chris. Yeah. I'm with you, Chris.
Not Sally's, not Pepe's.
I'll throw a vote in for Pepe's.
What do you think, Paul?
Not close. It in a taste test with 15 guys over. We went to all 4. Everybody voted modern. Wasn't even close.
Yes.
Right on, Paul. Right on.
All right. Well, that's probably the most important thing we settled in this meeting today. And to the point on contingency, we're still, have utilized less than 15%. I think Hindley's the only one that we've crossed the 15% threshold. We're at 16% of our owner's contingency has been utilized, and have, for the most part, not really touched the CM contingency, more than about 4 or 5% at Hindley and not at all at Holmes or Royle. So overall, the financial condition of the project's big picture is very, very good. And I think that's partly what motivated starting the exercise of identifying those other areas that it might make sense to consider.
So Chris, just to kind of back up what your statement was. So on my end, the April pay app came out to we're at 45%.
Okay.
For billing.
Okay. These numbers, that's a great point, and I should have said that 42%, those numbers that are in Josh's report do not reflect the April pay app. That'll rolls forward one more month.
And just on my chart for where I think this will be by the end of the year, I have it at about 70%, in that 70% range for completion for billing.
And end of what year? The calendar year or the
end
school
of
year?
end of December.
Okay.
Just so you guys kind of got to.
Is that 70% completion in terms of scope of work or in terms of expense of the budget?
Expense of the budget. That's where I see us build out to by.
So it's going to ramp.
December.
It sounds like it's going to ramp up pretty
getting us
noticeably.
through. Yep.
Okay. No, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Hey, Scott, can I ask a quick question on that?
Yeah, sure.
Any changes from the kind of the cash flow? I think you had put together a nice one a couple of months ago, only because I'd like to, then give it to kind of Jen and Josh, because they kind of have a thought of how much they're going to spend all these months going forward for the next, call it next heavy duty, probably 14, 15 months. But if there's any change that you see there, just let us know.
So I think I have, I kind of did one at the beginning of the year. I'm thinking in June, I should probably tune that projection up.
Yep.
To where I am. I think, it goes up and down. Obviously, it's a projection, right? So,
sure.
I think I'm probably a little over from where I thought I was going to be at this point, based on what we build. So I think I could adjust it going forward and see where that hits. But yeah, I could redo that projection and get something out to you guys.
But I think that's especially irrelevant if what you said is true, Scott, which is there's going to be kind of an acceleration of the spending.
Yeah, and I think that's in there, Chris.
Yeah.
It's just if you you know, there's no way I fully expect like one every month, but if you can kind of update, I think it was probably a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, maybe you did one, or even we were trying to do something for the budget
Yeah.
overall for the town. But
Yeah.
you know, if you want to do one in late June, early July, that would be great. You could just
Yeah, I'll
just share
definitely
with
get
the
you
group.
something in the next month or so for sure.
Yeah,
I
perfect.
was looking
Thank
at
you.
it this month when I was, plugging the numbers in, and I was thinking that I should probably get it tuned up. So it's probably a few $100,000 off.
Super. Thanks.
Yep.
Cool. Well, then with that, I'd like to switch to review and approval of the pay apps. The first one, if I could get a motion to approve pay application number 12 dated April 30, 2025 for the Hindley Elementary School in the amount of $508,869.72. Sarah moves, Jameson seconds. Rob, do you vote? Do you have all in favor? All right. Thank you. Passed. Could I get a motion to approve pay application number 12 for the Holmes Elementary School dated April 30, 2025? Pay application number 12 in the amount of $835,159.44. Moved, second. Everyone in favor? Approved. Great. And then could I get a motion to approve pay application number 12 for the Royle Elementary School dated April 30, 2025 in the amount of $1,161,391.92. Rob moves, Jameson seconds, all in favor, passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll get those, some combination of Chris, Sarah, Rob, and Jill. We'll get to town hall in the next couple of days and get those signed so they can be put in the process to pay you, Scott.
That sounds great.
Otherwise, we're current, right? You got paid. Did you
Yeah,
guys?
this is it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anything else that? Go ahead.
Just trying to remember now that I'm thinking about it. I think I'm trying to remember if the March payment came in.
You don't have. Yeah, let's not have people wait. If you could confirm it, if you say nothing, I'll assume you were paid. If you didn't get it, shoot me an email.
Yep.
And I'll make sure to follow up with Josh.
None of the subs have called me looking for money, so I'm generally thinking that went out.
Right.
They're my first indicator if we got paid.
It's a good sign.
Right. Anything else that anybody wants to bring up while we're together?
I will send out, John's gonna send out the minutes tomorrow, and you'll have the ball and court PCO logs
Yep.
in that.
Okay.
Just quickly for Henley, it's mostly in Travis's court, but there's a bunch in there for Travis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 for Travis and Henley.
Yep, we're chipping
1,
away
2,
at it.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for Holmes in Travis's court. And then in Royle, I have 2 in Travis's court, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 in the building committee's court.
I should have approved those 4 for Royle while we were on this meeting.
Oh, that's dirty pool, Jameson.
I got it done for you. It's called multitasking.
It's a page out of our book.
Maybe you should
Travis, how many did you get
Travis.
done during our meeting?
Yeah, exactly.
I should have taken your cue.
Well, Travis, next
I usually
time.
send them around 11 p.m. and he'll get them right before the meeting.
Well, that's great. Thanks for getting those done. I appreciate that.
Okay. If nobody has anything else, if I could get a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah, our next meeting is
June 18th, Wednesday,
18th.
June 18th. And if anyone has conflicts, please let me know. We can move accordingly.
Perfect.
Sarah, just so you're aware, that is Dr. Addley's retirement that evening. So I know he won't be there. Principals won't be able to come likely. So just so you're aware of that.
Thank you for telling me that.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if that creates a conflict for Jill as well.
Yeah.
All right, let me look into it. If we need to move it, we need to
Yeah,
move
if we
it.
need to move it one day or another the other way, we can do that.
And as we start to get in the summer, if you guys have some serious like vacation plans or whatever set in stone, if you could pass them along to make, and that way we can avoid doing, 17 email chains and
Right.
big conversation, that would be helpful. Everyone's allowed to go on vacation.
No,
The dates are in the calendar through July. I will add additional dates. And but let me know if you have plans. Thanks.
Beautiful.
no one's allowed to go on vacation.
I saw that, Matt. No, that's not.
Yeah, what's
All right.
vacation?
You guys aren't. We
right.
are.
All right.
Yes,
I don't want to
Scott,
create
provisional.
I don't want to create conflicts here. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn? Rob moves, Tom seconds, all in favor. Thank you, everybody. Really
Aye.
appreciate it.
And just
Have a good
before I
night.
jumped off, Dave wanted me to apologize that he got tied up and couldn't make the meeting, just so you know. He was gonna get on but got caught up in something else.
No worries.
See
All
you.
right, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all. Bye.
Chris, really quick, the workflow that you mentioned that you emailed about, that one is currently in Paul's court. So as soon as he pushes it through, then it goes to you.
Okay, that's great.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey,
problem.
thanks, guys.
Bye.